So here it is. You know, this is just how I do it. I've learned a lot from people over the years, learned a lot from watching Dan Earlywine and Ben Crow at Crimson Guitars, all of his builds, Texas Toast guitars, Brad Angove. You don't need anything too crazy, but there are a couple of things that you might not have that I think are worth getting. So a string winder, if you don't have one, saves your time, saves your fingers. Screwdriver, mostly used in Phillips head. I like this kind of thing because it's just sort of self-contained, and those little sets of screwdrivers, little plastic case they come in, always breaks, and then you can never find them. But this I've had for years, and I've never, you know, lost a piece from it because they've got the little spring-loaded, you know, ball bearing in there. So Allen keys, Allen wrenches, and it's going to depend on the Strat you've got. It's going to depend on who made it and where it was made and when it was made, blah blah blah. I mean, it's good to have a set of Imperial and a set of metric around anyway. This is not a Fender, right? This is so it's therefore not a Stratocaster. It is an S-shaped object, or a Stratocaster shaped object. It's an MJT body and a Warmoth neck. Other tools that you might not have. This is an understring radius gauge. Let's see if you can get it to focus on this. They come in sets, usually, you know, we've got all these different radii. Now this is a compound radius, as they call it. So it starts out as 10 inches down here, compound or conical, right? And so it's like a conic section. So it's 10 here, and then it starts to flatten out as you get up here. So by the time you get to here, it's 16, or it's supposed to be anyway. I've used compound or conical radius fretboards for a long time, and I've used straight radius fingerboards during the same period, and I honestly don't think that there's a meaningful difference in terms of playability. So I'm no longer ordering necks that way. I'm no longer seeking that out. If you do have a conical radius, you want to continue that flattening out as you go to the bridge saddles. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but it seems like it would make sense, because the strings don't really care that there's no fingerboard left. You know, I think to keep the right shape up and down. So these things we will get to, but I think they are well worth getting a set of. And the next thing is something like this, right? So you can get these, this little card here. Let me get some light on here. I think I got this from Amazon. You can get them from StewMac. Just about every luthier supply company makes something like this. Now, yes, a set of needle nose pliers. Not really necessary, but I'd like to have them around because I always end up having to, you know, do something with them. And what else? Oh, this little guy. So again, this is not strictly necessary, but for a Stratocaster especially, this is super useful. It's a little tool that's got a socket on it, right? And a little plug that will go into your jack. You push this in, and it holds the jack in place, and then and then this will turn. This piece will turn, and you just tighten your jack if it's loose. Mine was not loose, so it didn't go anywhere. This is a notched straight edge. I got this on Amazon. It's aluminum. Some manufacturers make them out of steel. This one works fine. It was not that expensive. Yeah, you can get this kind of thing from StewMac. You can get it from Crimson. You can get them from Solo, and probably a bunch of other manufacturers. I can't even remember who made this. Neck Check Guitars, made in the USA. So it has notches for the frets. So this is to help you read the flatness of your fingerboard independent of the fret surface. So the notches avoid the frets, and this surface here reads the fingerboard itself. And this one has the 25.5-inch scale length on one side and the 24 3/4, so Fender style or Gibson. Oh, the other thing you should have is a set of wire cutters. This string winder has wire cutters built in to cut the strings. It's not a great set of wire cutters, really, but it gets the job done. I recommend you use something better than that. That's it, really. I mean, if all the guitar needs is a basic setup, that's all you're gonna need. If it needs anything more, like obviously if it needs wiring work, you're gonna have to break out the soldering iron. If it needed fret work or nut work, you'd want some specialized files for that. Let's get the rest of these strings off. Now this one is kind of a pain because I had to put the hip shot drop tuner guy on here, but had to do it. I do think that's a useful little thing though, if you do drop D a lot, especially if you're prone to forgetting to tune to drop D before the song starts. If you know, because you will notice really quickly if you're in the wrong tuning, and you can just go right up there and boop. This is, for those of you who are curious, this is a roasted maple neck with a roasted maple fingerboard. I don't think it's one piece, although actually it actually might be one piece. With roasted maple, you get very good stability. I almost never have to adjust the truss rod on this seasonally, you know, like I do on other guitars. So the nice thing about that is I can get on an airplane at Logan, and I can end up in California or Texas with a completely different climate, and I don't have to adjust the neck at all, which is super cool. One of the attractions to the roasted maple is that you don't have to put a finish on it for it to remain, you know, stable from a flexing point of view, but it is rather brittle when you're drilling into it, or when you're putting these grommets, inserts, I can't remember what these are called, for the vintage style tuners. You know, maybe if you were using a more modern bushing style like this one for the hip shot tuner here, it wouldn't be such an issue, but still, just putting these screws in here, you need to be really careful. And I did not put finish on this, and I was super careful. I used pilot holes, and I still had a problem. The headstock cracked all the way along this line here, almost all the way through to the face of it. And it didn't happen right away, right? It happened over a period of a couple of years. But that was a bummer. So anyone who tells you you don't have to put finish on these is partly lying to you. You really don't have to put it on the back. But I would not recommend leaving the headstock bare. I'd recommend putting something on there. I use, oh yeah, I've been using this wipe-on poly, just a thin few coats of this. This is from StewMac, but you know, it doesn't have to be that brand. It doesn't have to be StewMac brand. Nobody's paying me to do any of this or tell you any of this or make any kind of recommendations. This is just my opinions, by the way. So, one of my projects, well, I had no gigs sitting around during the pandemic. Well, I shouldn't say I was just sitting around. I was doing a lot of online teaching, but working on my guitars has been a major activity the last year or so. So I had a bunch of these headstocks that were starting to get that problem. And this one was the worst. So I actually broke it all the way off. And actually, yeah, it was here. It was here that it was splitting, this one. The other ones had more of a problem here, but this one was split here, all the way through, down to here. And so I just broke it off all the way and glued it back with tight bond. And I only was missing a little bit of wood here, so I had to fill that once the glue dried. But once it dried, you know, put the bit of finish on, buffed it out. I'm pretty happy with it. And it doesn't look awesome, but I don't need it to look awesome. I just need it to look credible, whatever that means. But now it's very strong and stable, and I don't worry about, you know, because the wood just needed some support, you know, from I think it just needed to be sealed a bit, and you know, I'm not worried about sealing it for protection from the elements. I'm just kind of I think it needs that finish to keep it from splitting or cracking when you work on it. I wouldn't roll these up if I was going to just throw them away, because I would not want an animal to get their head stuck in there. But these are going to go to a string recycling program, and they're just easier to deal with if they are coiled up like that. So, a little bit of cleaning. But you know, just a standard guitar polish. Put a little bit on the. Now for a maple fingerboard that's got finish on it, I did put a little bit of finish on this fingerboard, but I don't really use regular guitar polish on that. For one that's for like a Fender neck that's got a bunch of finish on it, you can just use polish, regular guitar polish on it. But I'm just gonna clean the body and the pick guard. It gets a little dusty. Probably pick dust, among other things. there. That's all we need to do. And then I take the, the unpolished laden side and just, if you've got a rosewood fingerboard, then rosewood or ebony or something that doesn't have any finish on it. Lemon oil. There are various manufacturers of lemon oil for fingerboards. And do I have any here? I don't, apparently. But you could use that at this stage. Next, we're going to need strings. Tell you what, you'd think that I would have all my stuff together before I started shooting. Of course I don't. There we go. So, in terms of stringing, you put the string through, right? And I recommend not putting the back plate on. I recommend if it's got one, leave it off. If it didn't have one to begin with, don't even bother putting it on. You want to always keep a finger on the string, or else it's going to pop out of your either the hole through the side of the post or down through. I have the vintage style tuner, so I have to cut the string before I start winding. So I'm keeping one hand on the string so it doesn't pop out on me. So it's loose here. I'm now going to switch hands, right? And I'm holding the string here and keeping some tension on it. Not putting a kink in it, right, down here. I'm just holding it so that it's not going anywhere. So that I can control how it wraps down the post. Right, actually, I forgot that these are short. So I've got the graduated height, post height here. So this is actually going to want to be shorter. Hopefully I didn't go too short. No, I think we'll be fine. Now, you don't need to go around that many times. You need to go around enough times. If you've got string retainers, a string retainer is going to pull down here, right, and put a more extreme break angle on the nut. If you don't have string retainers, you'll want to have these posts that get shorter as you go out to the first string, right? Because that gives you a prayer of having a decent break angle. Now you don't want too much, right? You don't want too much of a break angle on the nut. You want enough. I have basically just enough break angle on this first string right now. Of course, I've done this before on this guitar, so I know what to expect for the most part. So, string number 2. So I'll probably just speed through the rest of this. If I think of anything brilliant while I'm doing it, I'll slow it down again. So here, my posts are starting to get taller, right, as I'm going to the lower strings. So with this one, this is the 4th string, I want to go down the post enough to get a good break angle, but I don't want to have too many windings because the string's going to have to stretch out longer before it feels like it wants to stay in tune. And actually it may never be as stable as it would be if you had fewer windings. But you do need enough. So I'm just eyeballing this. I've done it enough times to kind of know what I'm going to end up with. But if you want to be more precise, this does work. If you measure out, so pull the string taut, and you know, when you're pulling through the block, the trem block like this, you want to make sure that the ball end is caught in that countersunk hole there. Because if it's hanging out, or if it gets caught on the lip, and you pull the string taut and you start tuning, you're going to put a kink in the string where you don't want it, and then when it finally pops into place, you're going to have a kink right here. So you always just want to make sure it's pulled all the way through. But you'll get a sense for it. Just, you know, pull it. You'll know what that feels like after a while. So anyway, you pull it up, and you put your finger there on the post, and then you measure out for your excess that will amount to your windings. You measure out 2 posts that way. Now, of course, that only really works on, you know, starting with the 3rd string, but you can imagine, you know, you can extrapolate. Measure out 2 posts, and then that's where you're gonna put it through and start winding, and you'd leave that much, you know. It doesn't really work the same way with the vintage style, so I just eyeball it, you know. If you cut the string too short, you've burned a string. You need to get a fresh one. So it's better to err on the side of too much excess over here, because you can undo it, pull it further through, and then redo it from there. Because then the kink you made to start winding it will be as part of your excess. So err on the side of more excess if you're not sure. It's gonna be good. All right. See, that one I didn't cut until I put it through, because this is a more modern style tuner. Show you that there. See how that works? You get the vintage style tuners and the hip shot guy, and I just don't use the last 2 screws that would have gone in the vintage style tuner assembly, or stabilization screws, or whatever you call them. Because if I used that one, it would interfere with the operation of this, and it doesn't seem to matter that it only has one on this side. It works just fine, and that allows me to use this and those. And I prefer the vintage style tuners mostly because they're not that expensive, and they work fine, and they're lightweight. Prevents the neck from diving, you know, or feeling unbalanced. I almost always feel like the guitar balance is better when I have the lightest set of tuners on it that I can find that still work. I think they're SD91 staggered. They've always worked really well. So anyway, that's stringing. And if you liked your setup on the guitar to begin with, and you didn't change string gauges or anything, you might be done right at this point. Just get it sort of close to in tune. Check to see if you like it. You know, and if you're done, you're done. But if you're not, and you need to do a setup, stay tuned for part 2.